That red button. You have to do it immediately. That right there, to the right.
Right?
Yeah.
It says end stream.
Oh, okay. Oh, well then I'm live. That's so exciting. Today I'm making the dessert person, Claire Saffitz's coffee cake recipe. I know we made a coffee cake like 6 weeks back, but it's Thursday, and on Thursday I love to make fresh desserts for our weekends. So Claire's coffee cake, how she describes it, is light, silky crumb, brown sugary flavor that is wonderfully balanced with bitter notes and a great smell from the brewed strong coffee. And you know, she's known as a culinary genius. So this was kind of that go-to that I wanted to try and enjoy. And I've made it multiple times. I'm going to tell you exactly what her recipe is versus some of the small changes that I made as preferences for myself. And special equipment. I highly recommend using a stand mixer for this recipe. It's just that there's so many components and things being folded in. You're definitely going to get such a great outcome if you already have a stand mixer. There is a lot of volume to tackle with this cake, so just went over that. Also, a paddle attachment versus a whisk attachment is going to be helpful for this as well. As always, I have my computer right in front of me as well as my notes, so I will reference that along the way. And what else is special? Another thing that's special about this is that you're gonna need instant coffee for this recipe, not to be confused with espresso powder. Yes, instant coffee grounds, no espresso powder. So it makes a huge difference because you're going to get something kind of a lot stronger if you use an espresso powder. So those are the special pieces of equipment and recipes that we need. Let's get started. We gotta line the tray. I've already done mine. And if you've been here before, you know that I line with 2 pieces of parchment paper and a clip. You can always bake the clips, it's no problem. But it holds everything together when you're spreading. It's really nice. I use a 9x13 for this. This is exactly what Claire uses as well. If you can absolutely have the recipe and use something smaller like a loaf pan, but it's a lot of volume and it's kind of the perfect proportion if you are wanting this ribbon.
Zoom in.
Yeah, let's zoom in. I like it. If you're wanting this ribbon. Bam, ba, bam, bam, bam. Oh, I'll lower it down a little. See that? So with that said, I think we can zoom out now. I'm just gonna go turn on your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Like first, let's make sure that the grate is in the center of the oven. Got it. And now we're going to prepare the ribbon. So the ribbon comes first. Grab your whisk. 3 tablespoons of light brown sugar. That's what Claire uses. If you only have dark brown sugar, no problem. That is just going to have a little bit more of a molasses flavor. And I actually really enjoy that. All I had was light brown sugar, so I'm gonna just follow the recipe. I have 1 tablespoon of the instant coffee granules. Again, mine is from Trader Joe's. Claire uses Folgers, adding it. Then I have 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, adding it. And we're gonna whisk it and then set it aside. This is going to be that in-between layer that I showed you before. We'll do it, we'll set it aside. Just make sure it's really pretty good incorporated. I still see chunks in there, and that's okay. This is so relaxing. It already smells so good. One thing I wanted to tell you that is if you are a viewer in the US, you might already know this, but coffee cake in the US does not traditionally have coffee in it. And that's what's so special about Claire's coffee cake. So that looks good to me. That's what it looks like. I'm gonna set it aside. So now I'm going to do the topping. And actually, one thing to note about the ribbon is that if you were here with me to do John, the Preppy Kitchen's coffee cake, he adds flour to his ribbon, and Claire doesn't. Fun fact. Anyways, let me get the bowl that I'm going to use for the topping. I have my 1/4 cup all-purpose flour. That is 160 grams. And my sieve added. You don't actually have to use a sieve. You can just add all of the dry ingredients and use a whisk to get it all together. But all the dry ingredients I set out at lunch, and I just wanted to get it extra sieved. The next one is 1/2 cup of packed light brown sugar. That's 100 grams added. And let's just mix that in. Then we have the 2 teaspoons of instant coffee. Oops. And then, so here's a note. Claire uses 3/4 a teaspoon of ground cardamom. I don't like cardamom. I think it becomes the hero of the flavor versus an accent, an accentuation of the flavor. So I use 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. That's what I like. And then Claire uses 1/4 teaspoon of salt, kosher diamond salt. I use pink Himalayan salt. And mix. So the brown sugar is a little chunky. This takes a second longer. So I mix all of this before I put the 1 stick of butter in, and I'll mix it by hand. So one thing you might be wondering is, how do you store this? Well, this keeps great. I cut them up, I put them in Ziplocs, and I store them in the freezer for 2 months, and it's totally fine. And then same thing, you can keep it at room temperature, just keep it in an airtight container. If you want to warm it up, just microwave for 15 seconds. And that's pretty good. I'm gonna add the butter now. As you can see, I like very handsome sizes of my coffee cake. I can't help it. And just so I don't make a huge mess, I'm gonna just transfer this. Bam. Let me know who's here and if you're already excited for the weekend. You know, one of the things that I realized is that this chat, it doesn't really transfer to watching it later. That's okay, no biggie. Doesn't carry over, not translate. So that's 1 stick, 113 grams. So just get in there. Mix it up. It's okay if there's chunks. That's normal. Just make sure there are no drastically dry spots, is what I would say. And we are going to use all of this for the topping. When you can squeeze the mixture into a small ball, then you know it's ready. Yay! I still see some butter on the sides, so. A question that I get sometimes is, does the butter matter? Yeah, I think always having a great quality butter enhances the flavor. Also, can you make this dairy-free? Yes, I have made this both dairy-free and gluten-free. You just sub out the flour for a gluten-free all-purpose flour. And then also I find that a butter alternative works great. I prefer Country Crock over Earth Balance, but to each their own. It turns out great. This is a much darker cake than a traditional coffee cake. Man, I am so glad that I wore gloves for this. Yep. Toss in this. And then flipping pages. Give me a sec. Okay, we can set this aside and we're gonna move on to batter time. So, I always think about this as dry ingredients, wet ingredients, and building the fat back into the recipe so we can get a nice fluffy cake. So let's start with the 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour. That's 455 grams. And again, because you don't really need the sieve. I don't know, it's just a habit. But then I learned you don't really need it, and now the habit's already formed. I guess it's going to be extra fluffy. The reason why we sieve is to aerate, get any chunks out. Then I have the 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. That's 10 grams. Then half a teaspoon of baking soda. And then salt. Again, I use Himalayan salt, 1.5 teaspoons. Turns out great. Yes. It's already getting hot in here. Like this here. And then I whisk this and set it aside. My table's getting really crowded. Let me just move this back. Okay, so now that we've done this and I've set this aside, we're going to move on to, oh, it was just back here. The butter and sugar. Yes. Oh, okay, our oven is at room temperature. No. My butter is at room temperature. I got it out maybe like an hour ago before we started. I had to rush between meetings. Yes. Then I have our 1 cup of granulated sugar. That's 200 grams. Oh, per Claire's recipe, I actually altered this to be 3/4 of a cup, and then matches the 3/4 of a cup to the light brown sugar. And the reason why I did this, Claire, you're so awesome, is like I don't like a really overly sweet dessert. I like a pretty sweet dessert. And for me, now that I've done this recipe a few times, this is just the perfect proportion. So let me get this here. Ooh, it feels backwards. Why? Okay. Oh, there we go. Paddle attachment. I am just having all sorts of a day. This was kind of a stressful week, and this part is just fun for me. I know it looks ridiculous, but when I do it, but it's really fun. Anyways, so I've got that going. I'm about to add my 1/4 cup of neutral oil. I use a grapeseed oil. That is my preference. Let's just get this a little more whipped up before I add it. So I'm gonna want to do this for 5 minutes. Let me move this here so it can read my recipe. I'm just gonna slowly add this. So the reason why Claire adds an oil is it just adds more moisture to this recipe. There we go. And next tip that I have, remember to scrape down the sides along the way so everything gets evenly incorporated. Then we are going to add eggs. I want to show this to you guys. So this is 4 eggs, right? That's like 200 grams of eggs at room temperature. Well, 3 of the eggs are yellow and 1 is so hyper. My cameraman's not here. My partner. 1 is so bright orange. Isn't that so funny? I love that. When you're making curd, it makes a huge difference what color your eggs are. Here, not so much. Okay, we got a few more minutes to go. Let me just scrape this down. Look at all the sugar that's stuck at the bottom if I didn't scrape it. Let's make sure we get all of that nice and incorporated. Yes. Where do I put this? Let me just get my cell phone, because I was kind of thinking this person would be here. Hey, I'm live right now. Smiley face. Let's see if they join. So it's getting nice and fluffy. I gradually bring this back up. Yeah. And the reason why we do this is to aerate the mixture. Again, with each step, we're adding more air. We're giving it lightness. It's going to be really great. With the eggs, we're going to incorporate them one at a time, 20 seconds, again, to get that emulsified texture. Okay, we just have like just a couple more minutes, I promise. You just don't want to rush this, but it looks really good. Look how much lighter it is. I have a tips page. Oh, okay. Why is it called coffee cake? Because it's traditionally eaten with coffee, but it usually doesn't have coffee, not in the US. What does it taste like? A good coffee cake is very moist, tender crumb with notes of vanilla, cinnamon, brown sugar. Oh, let me slow that down a little. They also can be flavored with a few different things. With this, I think cocoa powder would be really good. I don't know about maple syrup or chocolate chips or fruit, or like blueberries and raspberries like a traditional coffee cake, but I don't think I would be beyond experimenting either. Like maybe I might try that in another video in the future. And also, oh, if my mom was here, she would say, you should add pecans because nuts are so good. So pecans, walnuts, or a glaze on top. That sounds so yummy. Let me slow this down. And oh, also add vanilla as well. Let me know what your favorite coffee cake recipe is like. Or maybe if this isn't your favorite breakfast cake, but you're just watching to chill out. Okay, so to let you know what the next steps are, well, we're going to be doing dry and wet ingredients. My dry ingredients happen to be what we've already sifted, and the wet ingredients happen to be sour cream and coffee. So oh, you know what's so funny? I need to do one tablespoon. So Claire gets her sour cream, which is 2/3 of a cup. That's 170 grams. The coffee is half of a cup. And the vanilla, 2 teaspoons. I've already added that in. And then instant coffee granules. So she adds that in to the wet ingredients. And I'm just gonna add that to the sour cream. She actually incorporates everything together, but I found it doesn't matter. So I'm just not gonna make that sloshy mess right now, you guys. Let's try and clean as we go. Let's keep it neat. So let's get in, we're gonna do 3 parts dry, 2 parts wet. So 1/3 of the dry. Oh, I was just doing it so that maybe you could see it, but maybe I should just do it the way that's easiest. So there's the dry ingredients. We're gonna get it 90% incorporated and then go to the next piece. Yes. Definitely, you don't want to overmix this. It makes a huge difference. Yes. So incorporated. I'm just going to add a little bit of this because we're just doing half and half. And I'm going to slow this down. And I'm going to add the other 1/3 of the flour. Okay, that's about 90%. And I'm going to do the rest of my sour cream plus the instant coffee. You know, I try to get my best to keep it organized here, but I think because I'm sprinting between lunch and meetings and things like that, it makes it more fun, is what I would say. Okay, so I'm gonna keep mixing, and then this time I'll mix, scrape down the sides in between. Then, what else? Oh, I have the same page twice. I was like, why is this recipe so long? Like, it can't be that long. I'm like running out of ingredients to add to it, but it's not that long. And I'll do a taste test with you once I put the cake in the oven and it's set there. You don't have to wait for the whole cake to be made. I learned my lesson on that one. We'll do some movie magic. So I definitely prepared in advance. And now that I scraped down the sides, I'm gonna add the rest of the dry ingredients. Yes. One tip I have is you never want to crank your KitchenAid mixer all the way to the highest setting and then all the way to the lowest setting. That can mess up your mixer. Now I'm like 90% of the way there, and I don't want to over mix, so I see some dry spots still, no biggie. I'm just gonna take this off of the mixer and mix it here. I'm gonna mix the rest by hand. Look at that, it's really thick. It smells not too coffee-ish yet, but you smell that a lot more in the baking. Oh. And remember, don't use espresso powder. It just makes it bitter. Okay, make sure we get everything down the sides. And just so you can see it, again, no camera partner here, but it's really thick. And I'm just gonna make sure that I see no more dry, no more streaks of anything. Just everything nice and incorporated. There might be some like molasses chunks in there from the brown sugar, but I wouldn't worry about that. Par for the course. Here is my lined cake pan, and I'm just gonna get about half of the mixture into here, then I'm gonna add the crumbles. Can you guys still see me? And the best strategy I would have for this is, okay, let me just make sure the bottom is super mixed. I saw like a little streak of something, and that is definitely not incorporated. But the best technique that I would recommend for this is putting splatters of the batter towards the center and then working your way out. And luckily the clips are on here, so it makes it easier to move everything around, but it's pretty thick. So let's do our best here. Another thing that would make this so good is sprinkles. Funfetti. My birthday is coming up, and I debated whether or not I wanted to do that, because sprinkles make everything better. But we're gonna stay classic on this. Let me know if you would like a video funfetti recipe, and I can just come up with my own. Maybe we won't add coffee to that. Okay, so I think we're about half. I don't know if you can see it, but got everything all distributed. The corners are all filled in. And this is an angled spatula. Let me just add a little more. It's really hot down here. Let me know in the comments below. Is it hot where you are this week? There we are. Okay, let me place this in here. And then here's the ribbon that we made in the beginning. Actually I have a tablespoon here. I think it's gonna be easier to adjust this. If you had chocolate chips, this would be the area to add it. That would be so good. Yum. One question that I get is, how do you keep it moist? Well, that's why the sour cream is added to it. And if you don't have sour cream, you just have Greek yogurt around in your house, you can absolutely use that as an alternative. Try to use a full fat Greek yogurt. That's always really nice. Hey, it's working really well distributing it with a tablespoon. But don't feel that's necessary. I normally don't, but it's just right here. It's dirty anyways. Nice. Okay. So then just gonna get the rest on. Again, you know, the key here, the magic here is making sure that the ribbon stays a ribbon. So we're just gonna add plops all over. And I mentioned this before, but how long does this keep? You can keep this at room temperature in an airtight container for a few days. It's totally fine. Freezing it works great. I keep it in a Ziploc. And also the ribbon is where I would recommend adding the jam, if that's where it's the route you want to take. Let me just put this down for a second. The first time I made this, basically everybody was waiting on the call or the meeting. It's not a meeting. Sorry, my day job is just stuck in my head right now. Folks were waiting with me to see what the cake looked like when it was done. And it was so long, but this time we won't do that. What I can say is, you know, the oven is preheated. And it bakes for 40 minutes. But before we put it in the oven, I need to spread this and add the topping. The topping's the best part, right? Sometimes I'll eat a piece just for the topping. And I'm like, hey, who wants my leftover? Who wants the leftover of the bottom part? Which isn't very nice. I try my best to share. I try. Hey, let me know who's here. I see a few likes, but I'm not sure who's joined. Okay, make sure it gets all to the corner. Wow, beautiful, so thick. Gosh, what movie should we watch tonight? So the month of my birthday, we do Harry Potter-a-thon. So I wear my Harry Potter shirts. I have my Harry Potter mug. This month for my birthday, I ordered a house sweater for myself. And I'll make a Hagrid cake. Okay, so did I do a good job getting everything? Gosh, I hate wasting. But so let's get it all in there. Okay, so since my hands are dirty already with batter, I'm just gonna use my hands to break this up, add it to this, You know what's interesting about Claire's topping is it's a lot wetter than the Preppy Kitchen's. No biggie, but like when I first did it, I was like, is this right? And then I redid the proportions. I'm like, yeah, this is what it's called for. And the top gets crispy, that's fine, but I do like John's crumble a little better. I'm sorry. It's just my opinion. You know, everybody just is a little different. And when it bakes, you get to see the nice crumbles at the top. So you have to be good about spreading this all out. Gosh, it is so wet. But this is how it is each time I make it. I'm like, is it me? But anyways, let me just rinse my fingers. And rinse, by rinse I mean wash. Oh no. Just so sticky. So I'm just gonna set this aside. I'll put it in the oven in a little bit. In the meantime, since you guys have been here, I just wanted to share my, my experience with this. So, oh, actually one more tip before you go. So I was doing research and I found a great tip on King Arthur's Flour site. You can prepare this coffee cake the night before and bake it in the morning. So everything up until that point, before putting it into the oven, just cover it with saran wrap and bake it the morning of, 40 minutes. It works great. So that was a really great tip that I learned and I love using, because what's better than the smell of cinnamon and coffee in the morning, especially when you have guests. It's great make ahead, and it's easy. Next morning, bake as directed, start testing for doneness at the end. The thing about Claire's recipe is that even at the 40 minutes, even at 45 minutes, it's a little shaky in the center. It gets firmer. It continues to cook. So don't worry so much about that. That's not really the case with Preppy Kitchens, which is like the context I have. But maybe just add 5 minutes to the recipe time to account for the batter being cold. And yeah, let me know what coffee is like where coffee cake is like where you're from. This is not the prettiest cake because it's all one color. That's just my opinion. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I'm so much about the cuteness and the brightness and the clarity of things, the crispness. The inside is moist, the outside is crispy. Even when you freeze it and you let it get to room temperature, it still has that texture on the outside. And I love to put this on foil and bake it in the oven and get it like nice and crisp and hot. It's speckled on the top because we put the instant coffee grounds on it, the instant coffee granules, and it's super easy to unmold. I mean, look how clean these cuts are, especially with my technique, because you can take the clips off and then pull the cake out once it's cooled. Make sure it's completely cooled and set. And yes, it's light, silky, not dry, firm. It's easy to demold as in remove from the thing. And it's very sweet dessert is what I would say. Like I can sit down and have one, whereas like Krispy Kreme donuts, I can, even though it's sweet, I could sit down and eat maybe 6 of those in one sitting. Here, really, I'm just, I'm ready to enjoy one, and then that's it. So thank you so much for your time and for joining me and learning how to make coffee cake. I will list the recipes with my changes on my vlog, and I will be here next week to do more baking. And so let me just taste this. Yep, exactly how I described. Make it gluten-free, make it dairy-free, make it classic. This is a great recipe for all of that. I know she hasn't tested that. She mentions it, but enjoy. Happy weekend. Thank you so much. Let me cover my mouth. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna go turn my camera off now.